Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. I was just thinking about how far I've come with my eating disorders. We're coming up to St. Patrick's Day. I was shopping at Walmart and we had a lot of St. Patrick's Day stuff, decorations and such. But I remember 5 years ago on St. Patrick's Day 2020 how messed up I was because of my eating disorder. Got to remember what had just happened. We were just starting to work remotely at this time. I was texting my boss and one of my colleagues. I was teaching at Washington Technology University. I was texting them. We were talking about what to do with these students and all that, and had to make sure everything flows. And my boss said that he was going to call me. He wanted to talk instead of texting. And I got very upset about that because I was busy eating. I couldn't talk. I could text. I mean, I was eating my favorite kielbasa sausages, which I had a hard time finding in the first place because of all the shortages at the beginning of the pandemic. And now the phone was just about to ring and I was upset. I was busy shoveling in the rest of the sausage down my throat so that I could pick up the phone, and I almost choked doing that if I remember correctly. And he called. I was in no mood to talk. But you know what? The pandemic had just broken out, so I think he thought I was in no mood to talk because of the pandemic. It wasn't. And that was very upsetting. Well, fast forward 5 years later, and I have a very different outlook on food these days. I was at my office munching away on celery this time, if you could believe it. Not necessarily out of the fact that I like the taste of celery, but there's a big effect that it has on my body. I've been talking a lot about it. And my student comes in and he couldn't stop talking. And I really needed to get to my celery, not because I had any binge problem, but because it's important medicine for me these days. But I was having such a good time with my student, the celery could wait. And it's just a lot has changed over the last 5 years. Now, food used to pigeonhole a lot of things in my life. Not only would I not want to talk on the phone with my boss and be upset during it, a lot of times I was holed out eating when I really should have been socializing. One of my big problems with food, and I still run into this a lot, I hate wasting it. And there are times when I eat to excess because I hate wasting food. There are times where I spend too much time at the dinner table just to finish the last couple of bites of my meal when I really could be using that time for better things. And I'm getting better at preparing the right. I still won't waste the food, but I'm getting better at preparing the right amount of food these days to avoid running into drama like that. And but I'm much more willing to put food aside for the moment to pick up the phone call. It's usually I usually do better if I anticipate something, right? If I know I'm going to be having an important phone call at 3 p.m., oh, I can handle that, right? When the phone suddenly rings, especially if it's a really important phone call that can't wait, right? So, for example, job-related situations are just like that, right? Or usually job related. Usually other phone calls can wait. And they come at odd times, and the person who's calling me, they're obviously in a better position than I am, and they probably won't have a different time they're not easy to reach, right? You have to wait for them to call you, right? Those kind of phone calls are always tricky for me, right? I'm never in the right mood to answer the phone when that happens, right? Uh, but it also makes me realize when I call people who are waiting for me, and they can't reach me easily, I make sure to ask them if now's a good time to talk. Make sure I digest what's going on in the background, and pay attention to what's going on in the background. Right? You can usually tell if somebody's eating, and if they are, and because I can recognize eating patterns, so I'll let them know that, hey, do you want to call back in 10 minutes when you're done eating or something like that, right? It helps that I've been on the other side of that equation as well, right? But anyways, 5 years ago, I loved eating so much. I was willing to jeopardize jobs. I was willing to jeopardize relationships. I was sometimes even willing to jeopardize my life, especially when it comes into the context of pandemics and the rioting that was going on. I was willing to go out in all sorts of dangerous situations. Go out in the middle of the night to get my favorite food sometimes.